Welcome everyone to the staff briefing of the results of the 2017 myVoice survey. Before we start, I'd like to let colleagues know that this presentation is being filmed so that it can be used across all of our campuses for those staff who are unable to attend each of the briefings. But it's also an opportunity for our casual staff who for the first time were involved in the survey in 2017 for them to be able to be provided with feedback on the survey results. Also, it's important to note that a copy of the presentation will be available online at the myVoice website, and that'll include some extra slides and further information that I know that colleagues will find of interest. It is our custom at Australian Catholic University to provide an acknowledgement of country. Today we acknowledge and pay our respects to the First Peoples, the traditional custodians of the countries where ACU campuses are located. These nations have faithfully cared for the country for thousands of years. I would also take this opportunity to acknowledge our elders, both past and present, and remember those who have passed on their wisdom to us in various ways. I would also like to acknowledge our emerging leaders. Let us hold this in trust as we work to serve our community. And we pray together. God of all truth and goodness, bless us as we gather here at Australian Catholic University. May we be strengthened in mind and heart to pursue what you inspire, with insight and deliberation, that our world may advance in true wisdom and justice for all, through Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, today's briefing will provide a high-level report on the staff responses to the myVoice 2017 survey. These briefings will be occurring on each of the campuses, but as we've indicated, today's also going to be taped so that it can be viewed by people not able to attend those briefings. And very shortly we'll hand over to the myVoice consultant who will be taking you through the university results. This is the fourth time that we've had the opportunity as staff members to be able to respond to this very important survey conducted by the myVoice team to provide feedback on our workplace and to provide even suggestions and an opportunity to reflect on our colleagues' responses to enhance the types of responses and strategies we put in place to improve the way that we work together. And I know firsthand how seriously we take your responses and my responses, because I get to respond as well, to come up with action plans that really do make a difference for all of us working here at ACU. So without any further delay, I would now like to hand over to Cindy Leung, who's our consultant from the Voice Project, a research and consulting firm that has administered the survey on behalf of this university and others. Cindy will take us through the results, and at the end we will have an opportunity to ask questions, but for our colleagues here in Strathfield, we will not be taping the Q&A section. So thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name is Cindy Leung. I'm a consultant for Voice Project. Very glad to be here walking you through your latest set of myVoice staff survey results. So just some background information about the myVoice survey. The survey this year, like Maria said, we have surveyed both fixed-term and continuing staff as well as casual sessional staff for the first time as well. The survey was based on a core set of questions drawn from our voice engagement survey and a number of tailored questions specific to ACU. For the continuing fixed term survey, there are a total of 173 agree-disagree questions, 3 open-ended questions for staff to elaborate on their opinions, and there were some new questions in 2017 to reflect the current context. Casual and sessional staff filled out a different version. There were 101 agree-disagree questions in total and 2 open-ended questions. Both surveys were open from 27th of March to the 11th of April. We received a total of 1,522 continuing fixed-term responses, and that gives us a response rate of 70%. There were a total of 942 casual and sessional staff participating in the survey, and they were chosen from a pool of 4,000 casual staff who were employed during 2016 and 2017. We'll first go through the fixed-term and continuing staff survey results, then go through some high-level detail results from the sessional casual survey. In today's session, we will go through ACU's results and performance across a broad range of management practices as rated by the staff. And you will also see the relative importance of these practices in predicting engagement and progress. We benchmarked ACU's performance of various organisational units within ACU. We're able to benchmark ACU's overall results with its 2014 results, its overall results against 44 other universities, and also against 1,900 organisations from a wide range of professions and industries. These were the definitions that were used in the survey. So we had definitions for Senior Executive Group, SEG, Executive Leader, Supervisor, Organisational Unit, as well as Customer. Let's look at some high-level participation summary for the results. As I mentioned, we received a total of 1,522 responses, and that was out of a total population of 2,179. That gives us a response rate of 70% and a margin of error of 1.3%. That means that your overall results will shift by plus or minus 1.3% had everyone responded to the survey. And response rates for divisions and portfolios range from 56% in Vice Chancellor and President through to 89% in Chief Operating Officer. For the casual sessional staff survey, we received a total of 942 responses, and that gives us a response rate of 22% and a margin of error of 2.6%. And besides, there was no response from DVC research. Response rates in other divisions portfolios range from 12% in Vice Chancellor and President through to 33% in Chief Operating Officer. Now let's look at some high-level results from the fixed-term and continuing staff survey. In front of you, you have a performance overview, which is a graphical summary of your staff survey results. It is presented in a color coding. The color coding on the screen reflects the level of agreement. Red tiles means that there is less than 50% of agreement. Yellow tiles means 50 to 80%. And a green tile means 80% or above, which is a positive result. Overall, your profile is mostly yellow with a handful of greens and a number of red tiles. ACU's performance is moderate to high on most practices, as you can see. Your results suggest that ACU's strength lies in its purpose and its people. In terms of purpose, many of your staff believe that they are aware of the organisation direction. They believe that AC has a strong focus on achieving positive results. They are aware and aligned with the mission and values of ACU, and also aware of how the Catholic intellectual tradition is, aligned with the mission and values. They have a strong sense of role clarity. They understand what is expected of them in the roles and how they contribute to the overall success of ACU. In terms of people, your staff appear to have a higher level of satisfaction in their colleagues, specifically regarding the ability and motivation of their colleagues, as well as the level of teamwork with these colleagues. You'll also notice that staff have a very high level of satisfaction and safety, and that's relating to awareness and commitment to safety overall. They're aware of the objectives of the organizational unit, so in the immediate team, in the immediate department, and how that relates to the organization overall objectives. Last but not least, staff working in ACU, specifically fixed term and continuing staff, appear to have a high level of job satisfaction. So they report that they like what they're doing, they enjoy their role. On the other hand, there are a couple of lower scoring areas. Communication and cooperation between departments and schools, perceived career opportunities, level of workloads and the management of those workloads are all lower scoring areas for ACU. You will notice that some staff were also less certain about whether change and innovation is handled well at ACU. So that's the overall picture. Let's look at some numbers. So for those of you who are not familiar with the survey, who are seeing these results for the first time, I'll explain those legends at the top. On the left, you notice a number of categories that are measured in the survey. These are all the outcome measures. We'll look at the other practices on the next page. Next to all these categories, that's the column of percent NA, and that's reflecting the percentage of people who are selected, not applicable or don't know. And then we have the percent favourable scores, and as discussed, that's reflecting a level of agreement on all of these categories. Next to percent favourable score, we're looking at 2014 percent diff, and that's reflecting the difference between your result this year and your results back in 2014. A positive score means you've improved in a certain area, and a negative score means you have your performance has declined in that particular area. You notice next to the 2014 percent diff column, we have some colourful distribution bars. They are telling you the proportion of responses received from each rating point. Dark red means strongly disagree. Coral red means disagree. Yellow means mixed feelings and neutral. Light green means agree, and dark green obviously means strongly agree. So they will tell you if you receive a lower score, whether those responses are mostly coming from mixed feelings or whether there's a bigger proportion of people saying I actually disagree and strongly disagree. Next to the distribution bar, you'll notice the comparison to other universities as well as with our all-industry benchmark. Similarly, a positive score means your score compares more favourably to the benchmark, and a negative score means your score compares less favourably to our benchmark. All right, so let's have a look at the actual results. Staff engagement score is moderate, and that's at 73%. It is largely stable since 2014 and is just slightly below benchmark by 3%. As mentioned, job satisfaction is high, and that was rated at 80%. Another important outcome that was measured in the survey is progress, and that's sitting at 64%. Although that has slightly improved since 2014 by 2% and is 5% above the university benchmark. This is primarily driven by some uncertainty about whether change is handled well and whether staff thinks that ACU is good at learning from its successes and mistakes. On the next page, you'll see your results across all the practices that were measured in the survey. On the whole, ACU's results have marginally improved since 2014, as you can see from this column, 2014 percent diff. And improvements range from 1 to 7%. And your results are above our university benchmark and all industry benchmarks in general. I'll point out a number of noteworthy results. We've already discussed about the highs and lows. In terms of comparison to 2014, safety and involvement have seen the largest improvement, and they've improved by 7% and 6% respectively. In terms of comparison to university benchmark, you'll notice that ACU scored significantly higher in 2 traditional HR practices, and they include recruitment selection that has increased by 9%, and learning and development as well, and that has increased by 9%. Sorry, that is above benchmark by 9%. So these are all the numbers and relative highs and lows for the practices. On the next slide, you will see a priority matrix. And this format of priority matrix is presented for the first time. All practices are plotted in the priority matrix according to the performance, which takes into account both the percent favorable scores as well as the comparison to benchmark and their impact on engagement and progress. Performance is plotted along the vertical axis and impact is plotted along the horizontal axis. So with that in mind, practices on the right have the strongest impact on engagement and progress. For example, teaching and culture. Practices where you've performed well on and have a strong impact on outcomes are your strengths, and in this case include culture at ACU, as well as mission and values. On the flip side, practices where you perform less well on and yet have a very strong impact on engagement and progress, these are your potential priorities for improvement. It's important to note in this particular case, your potential priorities don't include your lower scoring areas, such as career development, cooperation and communication, as well as work effort. In this particular case, our analysis suggests that your potential priorities for improvement include quality and support for research, as well as for teaching, as well as recognition of staff commitments and achievements. So these are already derived based on analysis. We do recommend you taking into account other contextual information when deciding on your priorities. Next, let's have a look at some of your top and bottom scoring items to give you a sense of what we mean when we say a certain category is your highest scoring area or your lowest scoring area. On this slide, you will see the top 5 questions in terms of their percent favorable scores. So apart from questions from top scoring areas, including mission and values, organization directions, and teamwork, this top 5 questions list also include 2 questions about behaviors, ethics, and conduct. Overwhelmingly, 97% of your staff said that they understand this ACU Code of Conduct and that they understand the behaviors expected of them based on this Code of Conduct. In terms of top 5 changes, compared to 2014, there have been some considerable improvements in safety, which we've discussed as a category earlier. And we've seen significant improvements in terms of safety training, safety focus, as well as management role modeling. They have all improved by 89%. Also, more staff believe that the training and development they received have improved their performance, and that's improved by 8%, and that the executive leaders keep staff informed about what is going on, and that has improved by 7% as well. Next slide, you will look at top 5 questions compared to our university's benchmark. So these are your competitive advantage. These are the areas where you've compared better than other universities in the benchmark. You will notice that all questions on these slides are scoring significantly above benchmarks. So it's ranging from 11% through to 16%. So anything above 10% above the benchmark, we consider that as significantly above benchmark. Specifically, 2 of them are about organisation objectives. So more staffs at ACU believe that ACU is reaching its goals and objectives, and that's 16% above. More staff at ACU than other universities believe that the future for ACU is positive, and that's 13% above and sitting at 80%. There are also a number of questions around organisation direction, facilities, and L&D. More staff than other universities said that they are aware of the values of ACU, the buildings and grounds and facilities they use are in good condition, and the training and development they received have improved their performance, and they are all more than 10% above the benchmark. Now let's have a look at some of your lower scoring questions. In terms of your bottom 5, there are some strong themes around cooperation and communication, which we sometimes refer to as cross-unit cooperation, and change and innovation. So 36% of your staff believe there is effective communication across all sections of ACU. And that's just not just across departments, it could be across roles, it could be across levels. 39% of your staff believe that knowledge and information are shared throughout ACU. In terms of change and innovation, it is beyond just change management itself. Specifically in this case, 39% of your staff believe that change is handled well at ACU. And similarly, only 40% of them agree that ACU is good at learning from its mistakes and successes. Another item on this list relates to work effort. 37% of your staff thinks that the improvements the process and workload have improved demands on their work. Bottom 5, changes. In contrast to the strong results that we've seen in awareness of code of conduct and the behavioral expectations, there were some negative changes in staff perceptions around diversity, inclusion, and equal opportunity. Specifically about whether bullying behaviours are prevented and discouraged, and that has gone backwards by 8%. Discrimination is prevented and discouraged. That's still sitting at a moderate level, 76%, but that has gone backwards by 5%. And also another item at the bottom of the list. I have access to the flexibility I need to manage my work and carrying responsibilities. That's sitting at 77%, but has gone backwards by 3%. There's also some decreases in a question about L&D. So when people start in new jobs here, they're given enough guidance and training. That's sitting at 55%, and it's 4% down since 2014. And there's also a slight drop in job satisfaction in terms of whether the job they do give them a sense of accomplishment. In terms of bottom 5 compared to our university benchmarks, these are the ones where you've performed less well on compared to our benchmark. There is a common theme around organisational commitment here. So despite strong job satisfaction and a moderate level of engagement, when we drill down into organisational commitment, it's actually below our benchmark. Specifically, 73% of staff believe that they are proud to tell people I work for ACU, and that's 8% below benchmark. I feel emotionally attached to ACU, 61%, and that's 6% below benchmark. There are also some questions around change and innovation, which we've already discussed, and also long-term intention to stay. So 62% of your staff believe that they would still be working at ACU in 5 years' time, and that's 5% below the average in our benchmark. And no surprises, we just talked about bullying, and not only has it dipped since 2014, it is also now below benchmark by 7%. So that was some quick summary about the quantitative results. We also asked staff a number of open-ended questions in the survey. Specifically, 3 open-ended questions were asked, and they were, what are the 3 improvements that ACU could make that would contribute to organisational success? And what are the 3 improvements that you believe ACU has made in the last 3 years? And finally, what support and or professional development do you need to lead and manage your staff effectively? First up, let's have a look at responses to the first open-ended question. We received responses from 67 of participants, and here are the top themes from the first question, so about improvements, top 3 improvements. There are a number of themes on this slide here. 19% of staff who gave a text response said that they would like to see cross-unit cooperation and communication improved. 12% of them would like to see improvements in leadership, and 11% of them would like to see improvements in technology, IT services and support. And not surprisingly, 11% of them said they would like to see improvement in workloads and perhaps workload management. And finally, related to that, 10% of staff would like to see some improvements in processes and removing bureaucracy. On the next slide, you're looking at some themes coming out from open-ended question around improvements that ACU has made in the last 3 years. We mentioned that staff would like to see more improvements in technology and IT services, and it's coming up here saying that some staff are already seeing improvement in this area, and that's mentioned by 12% of staff. On the last slide, we also saw that bureaucracy and process came up as a possible improvement for ACU, and 8% of staff who commented said that they already see improvement in this area. Another area that wasn't flagged in the previous slide as a possible improvement, but staff are seeing improvement in this area, is facilities and campus environment, and that was mentioned by 26% of staff who commented. On the last open-ended question, we asked staff what support and or professional development would you like to receive to lead and manage your staff effectively. 45% of staff participants gave a text response. You'll notice that the comments actually covered a wide range of topics, and there's not a very strong theme coming out from this particular open-ended questions. Some of the stronger themes were around training and development in general, workload and time management, and resources and staffing. Okay, so that was about the text responses. On this slide here, you notice is the weather map. And we are going to look at some lower level breakdowns of ACU results across a number of demographic variables as well as locations, for example. So on this slide, we're looking at your academic staff responses versus your professional staff responses. Even though the engagement level is similar, you probably cannot see it very clearly from the side. It's 71% for academic and 74% for professional. So it's similar engagement level, but we notice that professional staff are noticeably more satisfied than your academic staff. On the next slide, we are seeing location differences for ACU. Ballarat staff appear to be most engaged and satisfied, and Strathfield, which is on the right-hand side of the slide, appears to be on par with the other campuses in terms of its engagement and satisfaction. So very similar in terms of response patterns and where the highs and lows are. We also compared ACU results across different length of service groups. We noticed that the engagement and satisfaction sort of decreases slightly with length of service all the way through to 5 to 10 years, and it has slightly and then remain low beyond that point. So these are some of the high-level results from the fixed term and continuing staff survey results. Next up, we are going to have a look at the sessional and casual staff survey results. Again, following a similar flow, we will have a look at the high-level results first, but you will notice that we have adopted a slightly different model for the casual and sessional staff survey. It is actually a model that we've developed based on research and to focus on practices and areas that are more relevant to casual and sessional staff. On first glance, you notice that your sessional casual results are actually very strong. Note in particular that career opportunities and pay and recognition. So they will be here, pay and recognition, as well as career opportunities, which are down here. They are typically the areas that are scored lower in other universities, so they are scored moderate to high in ACU's case. The perceptions are generally more positive than your fixed term and continuing staff as well. Engagement is high, it's sitting in the green zone, which means that we've got more than 80% agreement in that area. And that is largely driven by strong organisational commitment and job satisfaction amongst casual and sessional staff. Participation practices such as cooperation and communication, which is green, and that's quite different to what we saw in the fixed term and continuing staff survey results. Culture, pay and recognition, and supervision, they are all rated very highly. Casual staff, sessional staff had fairly positive views about behaviours, ethics and conduct in the purpose section, as well as diversity, inclusion and equal opportunities. And they are supported with resources in their role, which is also green, and related to this, reported reasonable workload level and well-being. So it's all painting a fairly positive picture to begin with. So these are just some numbers behind the colourful tiles that we've seen. You'll notice that engagement is high. So looking at the specific number, it's 85% engagement amongst your casual and sessional staff, and that's 6% above the university benchmark. As mentioned, organisational commitment and job satisfaction are also high. They also have strong views about whether ACU is achieving its goals and objectives, and a clear majority of your staff agree with that, and that's sitting at 81%, and that's 18% above the benchmark. And as with the rest of the progress practices, they are also significantly above the benchmark. On the next slide, we're looking at all the work practices that were measured in the casual and sessional staff survey. I will point out pay and recognition. As I mentioned, it is usually a lower scoring areas for our casual and sessional staff surveys. It's sitting at 81% and 19% above our benchmark. And career opportunities sitting at 53%. Even though it may not seem to be a very high score, it is in fact already 29% above our benchmark. Again, we have put together a priority matrix based on your casual and sessional staff responses. There are quite a number of strengths sitting in the strengths section, including all the green areas that we've just discussed, for example, behaviours, ethics and conduct, pay and recognition, work effort and well-being, communication and cooperation, culture, and last but not least, diversity, inclusion and equal opportunity. On the other hand, there are far fewer priorities in the possible priorities section. Processes appear to be a clear priority based on our analysis. So processes related to whether there's efficient and effective processes to help staff do their job, and so on and so forth. We will look at the actual details in the next few slides. So these are the top scoring items for your casual and sessional staff survey. No surprise there, job satisfaction is very high, and this is sitting at 96%. 96% of your casual and sessional staff, they like the kind of work that they do. They like coming in and doing sessional key teaching. They like coming in and helping out with classes a few days a week. Diversity and inclusion and equal opportunity is heavily featured here. And they are all scored about 90%. 93% of casual and sessional staff responded said sex-based harassment is not tolerated at ACU. 91% of your staff said that my immediate supervisor manager genuinely support equality between women and men. And similarly, 91% of them said that sexual harassment is prevented and discouraged. And similar to what we've seen in the fixed term and continuing staff survey results, a clear majority of your casual and sessional staff also understand what behaviours are expected of them based on the ACU Code of Conduct. So in terms of your comparison to other universities in our benchmark, you'll notice that career opportunities comes up at the top. So significantly more staff, casual and sessional staff at ACU believe that there are enough opportunities for them to pursue a continuing or fixed term role at ACU. And that's 31% above the benchmark. And significantly more of them are also confident that they will be offered further casual and sessional work at ACU, and that's 27% above. You'll notice that the perceptions around whether they pay fairly for the work that they do is also significantly above benchmark by 24%. ACU is committed to my health and well-being, 24% above. Processes for hiring sessional or casual staff is fair, 23% above. So these are all very strong comparison to the benchmark. Because we've conducted this casual and sessional survey for the first time at ACU, there's no top 5 questions compared to 2014. So here are some of the bottom 5 scoring questions. Despite the fact that career opportunities are scored above the benchmark significantly, they are still relatively, the scores are still relatively low when compared to the rest of the practices. You will notice that at the top there, just less than half of your staff, 44% of casual and sessional staff, believe that there is a career path for regular casual sessional staff at ACU. 45% believe that there are enough opportunities for a continuing fixed-term role at ACU. And some other lower scoring questions around whether they have been mentored by experienced teacher at ACU on excellent teaching practices, 45%. And another question related to teaching support, 45% of your casual sessional staff believe that they have a private space to consult confidentially with students when at ACU. And finally, another bottom scoring questions related to induction and teaching. 53% of your casual and sessional staff believe that ACU has provided training on how to properly deal with and manage students prior to or during their time at ACU. As I mentioned, your casual and sessional staff survey results are actually very strong. They are significantly above our benchmark on most practices, mostly green. There are a couple of yellow areas, and therefore, even if you look at the bottom 5 questions compared to other universities, you'll notice that many of them are actually on par with the benchmarks, and some of them are even actually slightly above benchmarks. And the one that is just slightly below benchmark would be resources. I have access to information to perform my role. For example, database journals, that's sitting at 84% and just 3% below benchmark. Diversity, inclusion, and equal opportunity also comes up here, but it's just 2% below benchmark, which is still within margin of error. Some detailed breakdown across a number of demographics to give you a sense of whether results are different across these groups here. In terms of comparison across campuses, you notice that there are similar level of engagement levels, and they're similarly high in the green zone. Melbourne staff, Melbourne casual and sessional staff appear to be less satisfied, however. In terms of academic professional split, professional staff are more satisfied than academic casual sessional staff, and that's consistent with what we've seen earlier in the fixed term and continuing staff survey results. In terms of age, it bounces around a little bit across the different age groups, but there's no clear trend on this graph. You'll notice that it slightly dipped at the 30 to 34 age range and into 45 to 49 age range. But otherwise, it is pretty consistent across the age groups that the results are generally quite positive. We haven't analysed the text comments from the casual and sessional staff survey, and therefore they are not included in today's summary. But these are some of the high-level results from both the fixed-term and continuing staff survey, as well as the casual and sessional staff survey results. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Cindy, and we'll have an opportunity to look at questions shortly. The next steps will be that the portfolios and the organisational units will receive their results, and the leaders in those areas will start to have conversations with staff. They will be managing the cascading of the results and those conversations with staff to look at what are the actions, what are the ways that we can work together as a community to improve on the 2017 performance. And certainly at the university level, the results will continue to be analysed and to look at strategically what needs to be incorporated in our next set of planning both within the individual units, across campuses, and the university collectively. And I thank you all for taking the opportunity to look at the results, and I encourage you to mention to our colleagues that haven't been able to get to the meeting today to view the material and to look at the presentation that Cindy has given us. So thank you.